Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Sharna Southan. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today, I have with me Sian Douglas. Sian is the founder and facilitator at Healing Hearts. She is a bereaved mum who miscarried in August 2022, and this inspired her to find the Healing Hearts Network in June 2023. She offers in-person support groups, collaborative workshops, and seminars. Thank you so much for joining us, Sian.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Sharna.
We're going to have to separate our names.
Yeah, true. It's very similar.
When you said my name back to me, I was like, it just sounded like you said yours, but
yeah, it's the same for me. I just put the A on the end.
Yeah. So did you want to share your story and how you sort of came to, founding Healing Hearts?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks. So yeah, you sort of give it a bit of you summarized it quite well. But in 2022, I found out I was pregnant. And yeah, everything was like feeling good, feeling normal. Like planned everything, chose a name, godparents, all of that, all the exciting stuff. Yeah, and then in August I started like on one particular day I just lost my symptoms. I felt a bit like I knew something wasn't right, but I was like, I'll just see how it goes. I started to have a light bleed as well. But I thought, you hear about a lot of pregnancies where people have light bleeds and stuff. So I thought that it might be okay. I kind of stalled, I think like addressing what was actually happening. So I started to have some pain, the bleeding got worse. And I went to bed and I was like, I'm fine. But it was just, I think it's the acceptance of like, once you go to hospital or like once it's happening, it's happening. And I would say that night was probably the worst pain I've ever been in. Like, like I've broken bones, I've been kicked by a horse, I've been in car accidents, like I've had a lot of pain, and that was agony, excruciating, especially because you're pregnant, you can't take any painkillers. So I went to the hospital and they said to me it was going to be a miscarriage. And they sent me home. It was very I would just exactly like that, like you're gonna have a miscarriage, off you go, like there is nothing.
Very clinical.
Yeah, very, and it's just like no follow-up as well. Like it's just very, I mean, I could talk about that for days. It's just very, very little support. So I was sent home. I had like a quick nap, 2 hours. And then I got up, I went to the bathroom to pee, and essentially like delivered a small baby. So they said at the hospital, they were like, oh, you'll have sort of a like a heavy period, so you'll have clots, but you're quite early on, so you'll be okay. But I'm trying to be mindful, like not too graphic, but also but yeah, when it happened, there's like a wee body, like there's arms, legs, eyes, there's this like your child in front of you. And then I think at the time as well, and like nobody really talks about it, you're kind of sitting there and you're like, what do I do? Like, do I collect the body? Like, it sounds terrible. Like, do I flush it? What do I do? Like, do I bury? You're just, nobody talks about it. Nobody prepares you. And I freaked out at the time. I was just like, I was in a state. And it sounds terrible. I actually flushed it, and instantly I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, I flushed my child down the toilet. Like, it's funny to say, but you're just like, oh, what, at the time. And then I think from there, my mental health just really declined. Like I really really struggles. And I didn't, now that I look back at it, I can say that I think it was because of what I saw. Like I knew that I'd miscarried, I knew that I'd lost the child, but I think it was the trauma, and like hemorrhaging and everything in the hospital, just like all of that. Um, yeah, and I think everybody sort of expects you to kind of, after a couple of weeks, like you're gonna be okay. And then I had a lot of complications as well after the miscarriage. So I think I was admitted 6 times, I think, over like 6 months. And I know you've talked about this a bit, Sharna, like where you still feel pregnant for a while. So even though your head's like, I've accepted, I've lost my child, but you still, like, you can smell everything, like you still have cravings, you still feel those little pulls in your tummy. You still feel pregnant, and you have to keep telling yourself, like, your baby's gone, you're not pregnant. um for me, that felt like for a few months, like, and everybody around just like, what's going on? Like, what, it's been a while. Yeah, and then I remember chatting to a psychologist for, maybe a couple of months after it happened, and I went in one day and said, like, um I'm not coping, like I'm really, really struggling. And she was like, still, it's been, I was like, oh, right, okay, so I think just all of yeah, the experience was terrible. I went through quite a bit. Yeah, and then I really struggled with it, went through like the darkest place you could be in. And I kept saying, like, there's no support out there. I can't find any support. I did my research, I just couldn't find anything. So then I was like, when the time is right, when I'm ready, I'm gonna start a support group. But it's gonna be for women only, because I was like a single bereaved mom. So I was like, I'm gonna make sure it's for women only. So if anybody doesn't have a partner or husband, whatever, they can take part. Yeah, and I started that in June last year, and that's kind of what inspired it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And part of your story was actually what I was afraid of, like in going through my experience. Like I was, did they tell you? So I experienced like extreme pain,
Mm.
and then they told me I was having contractions. Did they tell you that it was contractions, or was it something else?
Yeah, they said to me it was contractions, like essentially because you're dilating like you would have a standard delivery. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is where it goes so wrong, because we are giving birth, like, and no matter what age our baby is, like our body is going through the motions of birth,
Mm.
and it's so dismissed. And like, you were sent home, and I
Mhm.
was sent home, and it was a very traumatic experience for me at home, and it was a traumatic experience for you at home. And my biggest fear was, what do I do if I see it?
Mm.
I don't know what it's meant to look like. And I was just losing so much blood. And I'm like, was that it? Like, was that a clot? Was that my baby? Like every time something happened, I was questioning. And then I was flushing the toilet as well. And I was like, I didn't physically know though, but I was like, did I just flush my baby down the toilet? I was so unaware of anything that was actually happening to me. But I know so many women grapple with that guilt of flushing their baby down the toilet,
Mm.
because again, it's not, the support isn't there. The doctors don't tell you, okay, if this is what happens and this is maybe what you see, this is what is available to you. Maybe you can keep it, maybe you can bury it and create like a little, ritual and do something special. But
Mm.
you're panicking in the moment. You're in pain, you're going through something that is life altering, and you
Mm.
panic. And I've there was one woman that I supported as well after her loss, and she was in the middle of dinner and miscarried and flushed her baby down the toilet, and then had to go back to
Mm.
dinner because she had people at her house. And she's like, I just had to kind of push it all aside and just, get on with, where I was and what I was doing. And I'm like, that was my biggest fear. How, and I know there's no right or wrong way to navigate it. How did you kind of navigate that, maybe the guilt or, you know, that trauma that you experienced afterwards? Like, I mean, you're not given the tools. And I know a lot of women sort of feel that when they're going in with that experience. What was something that what helped you through? Like, what was it that you did that helped you through?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like it took a long time. Especially like you said, the trauma, you kind of remember, even like when I think now, I can remember the sensation of actually delivering the baby. Like you feel everything moving through. And I was like, that's not blood, that's solid, that's a, I think I had to just keep coming back to the present. And it's so hard and it's so awful, but I had to be like, I can't change it. I can't, as much as I'd give anything, I can't change it. As soon as I did it, I was like, what have I done? But then I just thought I didn't want to expose other people to how graphic it was, like the body and the blood. I just thought, no, it's just, I didn't want to do that. But I was like, I can't change it. I have to just be in the present. I still had the pregnancy. I still went through it all, and I have to acknowledge that and validate that. But I find one of the biggest things I had to do was sort of bring, especially being a single bereaved mom, I had to bring closure, um, like to myself. So, like I couldn't bury it, couldn't. I mean, didn't get anything. So, I did end up doing like a little, like you said, like a ceremony. And that can be different for. I even talk about this in the support group. It's just kind of like acknowledging the grief. Sometimes you like push it aside, or you push it down. You're like, I don't want to talk about it. But actually, it helps you to, because you went through this experience, you have to acknowledge it. So it might be like lighting a candle, it might be going to the beach, like collecting some shells or drawing a picture or saying a prayer. It could be, or meditating, it could be anything. It's just like a little ceremony. And sometimes you can even do it with like a family member, a friend, or with your partner. I think as well, I did this a lot with addressing traumas. Was I actually wrote down what happened, just basically got it out, like it's like the completion method, or sometimes I would do it even in really graphic detail, because it's like you store it so much inside, you want to sort of get it out. Or I would write a letter, like to the, if I imagine what I would say to the baby, I'd write a letter to, like, what does that look like? Yeah, it's kind of, it's like you have to, how do you say it? It's like only you can decide what you're going to do, how you're going to address it. You can't fix it, you can't make it better, but it's like, how do you respond to it? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so powerful. And I think even just that acknowledgement of you can't go back and change it.
Mm.
And, and it's so, like, whatever you did in that moment, you did with the knowledge and awareness that you had at the time. Like, and, as in hindsight, we would love to take the time and know that this would, potentially what we had available to us. But a lot of the decisions that we make, we can't go back and change. And as hard as that is, and like you said, as much as you would want to, the past is the past. Like, we can't go back, we can't change it, we can't do anything with it. The only thing that we can do is change what we're doing right now in the present moment, and how we can support ourselves with that decision moving forward. And being able to write, like, that was something that supported me through my healing as well. It wasn't structured, it wasn't, like, for me at the time, like, it was just getting stuff out. I had an intention for it. It wasn't to make, you know I think a lot of women say that writing can make it worse.
Mm.
But if you have just the intention to kind of get out what's in your head, you don't have to reread it. You don't have to do anything with it. You could, if you wanted to, you could write it all out. You could burn it. You could bury it. You could do whatever you want with that. But writing was a really powerful thing for me as well. And it is a way to witness the emotions, the feelings, like you said, to that completion, like you feel like it just needs to come out, it needs to move through you, so you're not consumed with it. And writing a letter is beautiful. It's something I've never actually done, but I've heard so many women do. But I have looked up at the sky and talked to my baby, and I, actually the first time I spoke to them, I apologized to them. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that you know, I blamed myself so much for what I, and that's the thing, like you blame yourself for what you essentially didn't, like you didn't do anything on purpose, but you blame yourself so much for what you experienced. And then adding on top of that, visually seeing your baby and not knowing what to do with it at the time just further embeds that blame, that guilt, that shame that a lot of women feel. And it's so hard to kind of get yourself out of that place, to sort of know that you didn't do anything on purpose to hurt them. They only ever knew love, your love, and that you didn't do anything intentionally.
Yeah, thanks, Sharna. And that's really true as well. I think it's only natural as a parent, whether you've lost your little one or you haven't, you just naturally. I think my first thought when I saw the body was take my life and give me his back, like just instantly. But it's just, yeah, it's just, I was going to say something, I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, it's like, I think it's natural that you blame yourself because you're instinctively, you want to protect. And I think that's, I remember even up until not long ago, I would go back over every moment of the pregnancy and been like, maybe I shouldn't have ate that chicken sandwich, or maybe I should gone to that place. Maybe if I had slept better that night, maybe if I wasn't as stressed, maybe if I was, and you're just like, no, like you can't get stuck in that. Everybody does it. It's completely normal. You can't get stuck in that space of blaming yourself. Like you said, it's really sad, but you can't change it. Yeah, and just sort of forgiving yourself, I suppose, because you did the best you could. Yeah, but that takes a lot. You're still, as a mom, as a woman, you're like, it's the one thing I'm meant to be able to do, is be pregnant and have a child. And then you just think, what was wrong with my body? Like what? Yeah, you go through everything and millions of things. Gosh, I couldn't even tell you. But yeah, there's so much blame. And I think as well, like because of the experience and how horrific it is for everyone, it's almost like you try and forget it, because there's so much guilt and so much blame, and you just think, I don't want to think about it. And it's like when I tell people my story, especially in the support group, and they're like, that's horrific, I can't believe you went through that. But I also, for me, I'm kind of like, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't go back and change it, because it's a it sounds like a really backwards way to look at it, but I'm like, I got to meet my child. Like, yes, they were dead. Yes, they were in front of me. Yes, I couldn't do anything. I got to see them. I got to meet them. I got to experience that. So I sort of saw the beauty in it. Like I think a lot of people will say like, oh, you need to remove that experience. It's so horrific. And it's like, no, I actually said it to a psychologist once. I was like, that's the only moment I had with my baby. You're not gonna take away anything that comes with that. So yeah, went on a bit of a rant there.
No, that's completely fine. And that's the thing about, I mean, psychologists and therapy, it's great, but there are things that I feel like don't need to be relived. You don't need to go back into that past moment. Yes, you've got trauma. You can work on that trauma from where you are moving forward. Like, you don't need to go, more often than not, you can still support yourself without having to go back in and go into your past and relive that. Because, I I experienced trauma too, but I don't, I don't want to go, I don't want to go back. I don't want to do and think about all of those things, and like you said, you kind of relive it. Like I relived that day that my baby died over and over and over, because I was like, I shouldn't have gone on that walk. Like, it was a really hot day. I shouldn't have done that. It was my fault, like directly my fault. And, you cause yourself a lot of anguish over that. And there are ways that we can support ourselves from where we are now, moving forward and working on the trauma that is presenting, right now. And I think a lot of the time, the whole reason trauma embeds itself is because we don't have the support. We don't have that sense of safety in our bodies at the time that that's happening. There's no one, you haven't been prepared with the information. Like you said, you were told it was going to be like a heavy period. There'd be some clotting. That's what I was told too, and ended up bleeding out and passing out and calling my mom and telling her that I was going to die. So, and my husband's Googling, like, how long should she be bleeding this much, and how long is this going to last for? And, it's, I think that if we could mitigate like that trauma at the beginning, we wouldn't be carrying then. Yes, we've got the guilt. Yes, we've got that sense of we're female, our body has one job and it can't even do that right. Like, we have all of that. We don't need that trauma as well. If we're given that sense of safety and that reassurance and that compassion and everything at the time when it's happening. But yeah, I mean, I was going to say something then as well. There was something you said and I was like, oh yes, I'll go back to that. And no, I totally forgot. But everyone's story, everyone's journey is so different. There seems to be the common thread though that holds us all together, and it is that we may have experienced the trauma, and there is that sense of grief where society just likes to dismiss what's happening. You don't have a baby on the outside, so you have to be okay. But there is no right or wrong way to grieve. There is no framework. There's no, like, you start here and end here. Do you want to dive in a little bit about your experience with grief, and maybe how you navigated it, and maybe what you encountered in your healing as well?
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna say, it's like you said, as you're talking, I'm like mental note, and then it comes to me and I'm like, I can't remember what my mental notes were.
We need to start writing these things down.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but it just flows. That's all right. Yeah, like you said, I think it's almost like everybody's experience is different. It's so personal, I think. And you kind of, especially when you're experiencing it and you feel like you're the only one, you talk about it with other people and they just go stiff, which I understand for them. They're like, oh, this is awkward. Like, she's talking about her dead baby. Like, how do I support her? But you just kind of get to the point, you're like, nobody mentions it, nobody asks about it, nobody seems to want to talk about it, so I'm just going to stop talking. Which just, I felt like that I just internalized after that. So then I kind of switched and I became very vocal. And I was, no, I wouldn't make people uncomfortable, but I was like, we all sit here and pretend like we've never had a period, we've never lost a baby, yet nearly every woman I've spoken to has had some sort of pregnancy loss or stillbirth or something. And you talk about it and they're like, oh wow, I went through that too, or I experienced that, or oh, I can't believe you had that too, and you had the same thoughts. And you're like, yeah, but nobody talks about it. So when it actually happens, you're sitting there like, I'm the only one, but you're not. I think at first, I remember I was very much, I felt like I still felt like I was pregnant, which I know now was a lot to do with like the hormones, the physical element, and also you still want to be pregnant. So I couldn't really, like, I knew the baby was gone, but I was like, I just want to be pregnant again. I just want to feel the way I felt. Um, and I think I was very much like, for me, want to acknowledge and have everything around that remind me, because it was just like, oh, I've lost something, so I miss it. So I just want to, but I know everybody's different. Some people are like, oh no, I want to avoid it. I can't look at that. I can't talk about that. So I had like a printed photo of the ultrasound and the pregnancy test sitting out, and just like little things I'd bought for the baby and stuff. Yeah, I kind of was like that at the start, and then I went through a lot of stuff personally then where I was single and I was doing it on my own. So like I think losing the baby and then losing your partner, that's like a whole other thing. And then my experience of grief, then I totally switched. I was like, I've lost so much. Like I've just at that time felt like I had nothing. So I was like, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I kind of just suppressed it a bit. Um, and then just it was almost like at the time, to be honest, though, I suppose that worked for me. I just couldn't, I had to do that to survive. There was so much happening, so much I had to process. I was like, I can't sit and think about this right now. I just got to survive. Um, yeah, and then after that, I felt like I went into like, I just started avoiding it completely. And I actually did everything and anything to distract myself, like kept myself busy. And like just surrounded myself with people, like didn't matter who they were, good people, bad people, just people, and just socialize. And so I didn't have to sit with it. And then I just kind of got to a point where I was like, I'm not feeling this. Like I think this was maybe 6 or 8 months afterwards. And I was like, I have not sat down and felt this. And this is starting to be the time when I had the idea for the support group. But I thought I can't support others if I haven't dealt with my own grief. Yeah, so I think after like all the different experiences, and it depends on the day as well. Some days you're like, oh, I miss the baby and I want to go to the beach and light a candle and say a little prayer. And then other days you're like, I don't want to think about it. It just, you just feel like shit when you wake up. Sorry.
No, you're right.
I was like, you can blur that bit out if you need to.
All good.
I was in my head, I was like, don't swear, don't swear, don't swear. But yeah, I think there's days you wake up as well. I know for me, I just couldn't get out of bed. It's not that I was like, I'm a very motivated person, but it's just sort of, the grief is so much, you just can't get out of it. I don't know how to explain. It's such a dark place to be in. I would say it's the darkest place I have been in. But yeah, I think it was very dark to sort of sit with it and address it, but I forced myself. It was very uncomfortable, and kind of like we had said, I didn't really feel supported in like through psychologists, counselors, doctors, just the system. I'm going to say I didn't feel supported. I kind of got to the point like these guys can do whatever they want. They can help as much as they can, but at the end of the day, I'm the only one that can change anything. They can't get into my head and like, redirect my thoughts. That's me. They can give me all these approaches and they can try and desensitize me to the experience, but is that really what you want to do? Do you want to numb it or do you want to feel it? And then I find actually stepping into it and feeling it is where you see the beauty in it as well, like the love, the fact that you were pregnant, you were a mom or are a mom, and you still experience that. And for me, that, like I said, that was through a lot of journaling, prayer, like you said, even talking to, like I will meditate and talk as if, yeah, as if the baby was there. And you feel silly, you sound silly, but you're also like, I'm quite spiritual, so I do feel and believe like that soul is there, that soul can sense me, that I can communicate with that. Um, yeah, I think once I did that, it still hurt. it still, it still hurt a lot, but I would say only up until recently, a few months back, maybe, I actually feel in a really good place with it. Like it's still sad. It's still, there's still days you're like, oh wow, it's quite a lot. But I don't feel like it doesn't feel like this big void that I can't cope with anymore. But that took a year and a half or more. And it just depends on the person. It depends on the experience. And there will be days still where I'm like, I feel bad. I'm trying not to use bad words. I feel bad.
That's okay. I've heard that's a lot of spiritual people swear, so it's fine.
I was like, just don't say the F-bomb and you'll be fine.
Well, we can tick that so far. You've not you've not said that so far.
Yeah, we've done well. So yeah, I guess that was kind of like my whole journey experience. It really fluctuated as I went. Yeah.
One in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how? Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical, and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a lost mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives. Yeah, and it does. And this is like in the practitioner certification, I literally redesigned the grief because I'm just like, it's not this even. So everything that you see, it's just this like, you got a beginning and an end. And I'm like, no, it's not like that at all. It's just this spiral of emotions that you continue to go through and move through. And you can go down to rock bottom on one day, and then work your way up, and then you'll be okay. And then you go back down to rock bottom. But every time you go down to rock bottom into that darkness, you know that you've been able to move yourself out of there. So you start to become aware of more emotionally aware and physically aware of yourself and how that feels for you. And then you start to give yourself permission sort of more and more that you go into it. But it is that initial decision to feel it, to witness it. It's not comfortable. Emotions are energy, and they're not designed to stay stuck in our body. They also, our body doesn't know that they're negative or positive. They're just an emotion. It's the meaning that we give that emotion that it will stop us potentially from feeling it. But if we allow it to just come and allow it to and witness it to completion and know that it's going to move through us, like you said, there is so much more beauty in that. And then when you recall memories, the memories aren't so intensely sad. You may get sad, you may cry, but they're not going to knock you off your feet again. And have you stuck in that darkness for such a long period of time. And yes, it depends on each individual person. Someone could go through it in a couple of months, someone could go through in a year, someone could take 10 years to get to the place that you feel like you're at right now. But it is an individual journey, but to also know that it's a spiral. It's this thing that we just keep moving up and down. And just because we feel like we may have processed an emotion and it comes back, we're not a failure that it has come back. It's come back for a reason. There's another reason why it needs to move through you at that time. And it just needs to move through you. And the moment that you let it move through you, it may hurt. It's uncomfortable. You do what you need to do to release it, and it literally will leave you feeling lighter. Like I know there's a lot of fear in feeling emotions because we're not taught how to feel emotions. And you think, oh, if I feel them, they're going to consume me and I won't be able to breathe. I won't be able to stop crying. And humans are more afraid of feeling emotional pain than we are of feeling physical pain. So the fact that we know that there's this emotional pain that's there, that's looming over us, we choose not to feel it, but it doesn't go away. Like you said, it took 8 months for you to realize, oh, I actually haven't sat with that. But for 8 months, it sat with you. And you're like, it was waiting for that moment for you to go, okay, I'm ready. But also you have to, if you do it before you're ready, it can also be very detrimental as well. So it has to be a choice. Sometimes we do have to force ourselves because we're not taught how to do it. We're like, no one's got a rule book on how to feel these things. And often as children, we're taught you can't cry because that's, a sign of weakness, or don't get angry because if you're angry, you get punished. But a lot of the time, that's what we need to feel. You just find healthy ways to release that for yourself and whatever works for you. So what works for someone else may not work for you. So it's just finding that thing that works for you and having people around you or investing into things that can help give you those different perspectives, give you those different tools. But yeah, I love that you were able to share that, because I think a lot of women, social media is great for being able to share our experiences, but it also paints this picture of, oh, people are already over it. I should be over it by now. People are further along and maybe their loss was a shorter time period than mine. I should be feeling different than I am right now. But we need to give everyone permission to say, whatever you're feeling right now is valid and it's unique to you, and you just need to process it in your own time and do what you need to do with it right now. And not focus. And I think that's where I had to silence everyone else outside of me, because I'm like, no, I need to become really selfish. Everyone else may have good intentions, but I need to become selfish. I need to do the thing and I need to do it for me.
Yeah, that's really true. And especially like you said, sometimes you just gotta feel what you need to feel. And yeah, I think I was like that for a long time as well. Like, don't cry, don't, don't experience it. But then I just got to the point I was like, I feel like I'm trying to hold a cap on an exploding bottle. And so then there was times I was like, if I want to cry, I'll just cry. And that might be for 45 minutes a day for 6 months, which it was probably something around that. I don't know. It was, and I'm quite transparent. I'm happy to say how it is. But like you said, I mean, sometimes you feel ridiculous. You're like, I can't stop crying. Like I've been crying like an hour, 2 hours. And some people will be like, oh, that's quite, it's quite a long time. But also after you've done it, you feel lighter because you're like, I'm no longer holding in sadness, or loss or grief, whatever it is. I felt it and you just feel, you still feel sad, but you've let yourself feel those feelings, like you said. Or sometimes you feel quite peaceful with it and you just want to honor the loss and stuff, and then other times you feel terrible. Like it just and you can kind of get to a place where you feel more healed, but like it's always going to be there. It's always going to even for me, even last night I was like, I'm getting on publicly on a podcast and sharing my story. I was like, that's scary. And then I was like, but why are you scared? Because there's, someone like me who would have listened if I had known this podcast existed, would have listened to something like this, would have gone, oh, I'm not the only one, So it's just when you feel it, then you're helping others and yourself by doing it. But I think also we're very hard on ourselves. Like I'm saying it now, and I still am to this day. And sometimes you're like, come on, Sean, seriously, pull together. Stop crying, get over it. Like, stop complaining. Like, why are you so sensitive? Why are you so touchy? Like, just keep going. But I always say to others, and I feel like this is one of the biggest things that has helped me. What would you say to your friend, or what would you do to your friend if they were feeling this? Like, if my friend was like, Shan, I feel so bad. I feel so sad. Like I can't cope. I wouldn't be like, seriously, like get on with it. Come on, it's been it's been a month. You think you would have moved past this already? Like you don't say that. So it's like, why do you say it to yourself? I think I was also very stuck in I just wanted everybody else to fix me because I feel like we're kind of taught that we're raised that way. Like you need help, you go speak to someone. You want to work through something, you talk to a loved one, you talk to your partner, um your family, or if you're struggling, you seek professional help. So I think I was at the time like, I want my partner to fix me, I want my parents, I want the doctor, I want psychologists, but it's they can all be great supports, but at the end of the day it's you, like not fixing, that's not the right word, but it's almost like you got to be your own best friend. You got to It's hard. I think that's doing it alone was really hard, but my God, it made me so the strongest I've ever been. Sometimes you got to sit and hold your own hand. You got to It sounds silly as a concept, but it's like, just imagine that you're your best friend and your friend is feeling really low right now. Like how do you sit with that friend? And you got to sit with yourself. Like it might be cuddling a teddy bear. It might be going for a walk. It might be like, you know what, you just need a bath and you need to, light some candles and relax and watch a comedy show, or look after yourself. And that, yeah, I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And I loved how you said before, like, that you wanted almost like just someone come to essentially for psychologists to, get inside of your brain and go, okay, this is just all gonna, but like they can't get inside your brain. They can't make the wiring and make your belief system any different. You're the one that has to choose it. And then, you know, to feel like, and I felt it too, you want someone to fix you because you're like, well, if someone else can do it, then I don't have to. Then I don't have to do the hard stuff because it's so hard right now. Everything is so hard and so heavy right now that you just want someone to come with you or to you with the answers and go, here you go, do this thing. And, this is your miracle drug type thing. And it's just all going to be better. But you can't. No one can. You're the one that has to do it, and you have to choose it for yourself, and you have to choose yourself first. And I love how you said you literally have to sit and hold your own hand, and you do. And that's why I said to myself, I physically and verbally said it to myself, like I'm going to be like really, really selfish right now. I had to do the things that I need to do for me, and that's what you need to choose to do. You need to choose it for you. And yeah, it could be as simple as going and having a bath. It could be just getting out and going for a coffee or going for a walk, or, anything. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to cost anything. But we do need to choose that for ourselves, and we do need to be our own best friend and our own advocate. We need to tell people as well what we're feeling, what's going on, because a lot of people don't. They think they're fixing you, or it's like, you're not fixing anything, you're making it worse. So we need to advocate for ourselves. And again, we're not taught how to do that. We're not taught you know, how to be that person for ourselves. We're taught, you know, like you said, you find it in other people because, you know, they're the expert. But yeah, we need to do that for us first. And it is a whole new ball game. Like when you're learning how to do all of that self-love and self-compassion and kindness for you, because yeah, that voice inside of us, that self-criticism can get so very loud. And the negative self-talk. But I remember being a crazy person and talking to myself like all the time. Like I needed to hear myself. I needed to physically like talk it out. So I needed to hear myself say it. And then I was like, oh, that's not nice. So so it was like whatever works for you. And you know, this is a whole different side note, but this is how I got into human design, because that was like, this is the way that I need to know that things are right for me, because I needed to physically talk things out and hear it and have like a sounding board so that I could then make decisions and go, oh, okay, yeah, that's serving me and that's not. But it's this whole different ball game of rediscovering who we are now with this experience, with this trauma, acknowledging it, giving it permission to be there, but then going, okay, now how do I move forward with my life? Sort of embodying everything that's come, but also healing. And the only way that we can heal is to witness what we've been through and actually acknowledge what we've been through. And I think that's actually one of the first steps that I teach is, where are you skipping any part of your story? And why are you skipping over it? Why are you brushing over that? Because a lot of the time, the parts that we don't give time to, the parts that we skip over because we're like, oh, I don't want to go there. That's the part that we need to actually see. And that's the part that's actually going to allow you to grow. When you can tell your story with the authenticity, with the depth, with the emotion, with the rawness, that's when, and you can sit with that and heal with that. That's when we can start to move forward.
That's very true. Like you said as well, I think we're always sort of have this view we need to fix ourselves. You know, you're kind of like you said, you want someone, a psychologist, to come in. I remember having those same thoughts. Like someone can just come in and, you know, rewire, I'll be fine. And then everyone's like, you know, you're gonna be okay. It gets easier with time. Um, it'll get better. And then you're just sitting there like, but how? But how? Like but also I think you're it's just reminding yourself like you're not someone that needs to be fixed. You haven't done anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. All you need is support, and you just need to know just to do that for yourself. And even getting in the habit of like a safe person, not someone that's going to disregard you, but a safe person where you can say, "Hey, this is how I'm feeling. I feel low right now. I'm really missing the baby. Can you sit with me?" And someone that's actually someone you trust that can actually do that with you, I think is really yeah, it can be really effective, because it's like you trust that you can look after yourself, but there are people also that can make such a difference for um that support. And like you said, it sounds strange, but now I do see it as well. Like the more, not saying go and blab your story constantly, but the more you tell your story, the more, I don't know, the easier it gets. And I remember even in the support group, every support group I have, I always start out by telling my story, just because obviously people can attend and be like, who's this person? What does she know about losing a baby? Like, so I just tell us, so there's a bit of transparency. And I remember the first couple of times, and even a few times after that, like I cried. I'd be telling the story. I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'd be like, I'm here to support you guys, and I mean, so it just you have to, sometimes you have to feel it. But now I actually I couldn't count, but I would say I've told my story at least 20 to 30 times, not just support groups, like connections you make, like right now, just telling the story. And now I can tell it, and I don't like, I still feel sad, and you're like, oh, like it's, it's sad, but it's not unbearable. It's not, I don't look back and think of the body and the blood and the hemorrhaging and abandonment. I think I look back and think love, loss, connection, like that, those sorts of things.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. No, and it does allow you that next layer of healing when we can start to surrender and tell our story and feel into it, and like you said, you can look back over that experience and not have such that negative sort of outlook on it. Yes, it was bad. Yes, it was soul shattering. Yes, your whole life was turned upside down in that moment, but also in that moment, you were pregnant, you had a baby, there was love, there was connection, there was, there was beauty. And when we get stuck in the heaviness and the negativity, we miss that. We miss that opportunity to really connect to that beauty that is there. And it is definitely a place that a lot of women can stay, because it's a very easy place to stay there. But there is also so much beauty on the other side of choosing healing for yourself and allowing yourself to witness your story, to witness what your body went through, to witness, yourself, and show yourself love and kindness as well in amongst all of that, so that you can create more beautiful memories when you recall more of a beautiful memory when you think about what happened. Did you want to share just a little bit before we wrap up about your support group, and maybe what that entails, where you're located, or however people can find you?
Yeah, thank you. So the support group is called Healing Hearts. On Instagram, I'm trying to remember. I think it's just at Healing Hearts Support. That's the name. Yeah, and we do monthly events. It kind of sometimes it looks different each month, but it's just sometimes online or in person. Recently, we have been based at Scarborough Beach in Perth, but also we offer hybrid options. So if someone's want to take part online and they're over East or something, that's also fine. At the moment, it is also women only, and no, I feel like it sounds very, people are sometimes like, what's your issue with men? I'm like, I have no issue with like, not at all. It's just more so I get a lot of single women coming through, and then it's kind of, they're in a space where they're like, oh, I don't have to be in a relationship. So yeah, and in the support groups, it's really like a holistic wraparound approach, as in, it's very like, I didn't want it to be clinical. I suppose my experience of the clinical aspect, I was like, it's not going to be clinical. So normally we come around, we just like sit around in a circle, and we have candles. Recently we've actually been doing each bereaved mom gets a little candle, and they can light it for their little ones, so they can choose what smell and scent they like. And we also have herbal tea. It's very reliable. It feels like you're just catching up with friends. But normally it's also how do you say it? It's kind of everything we've been talking about in the support group. So there's that chance to share that this is my story, this is what I've experienced, this is what I'm feeling, but also, okay, where to from now? Like, where are we at? How do we process that? Because I suppose that's another thing I didn't want was, every support group has a different purpose, a different intention, and different benefit, but I just didn't want it that women attend and it's just like, hi, I'm Shan and I lost a bit, like just constantly. That can be really good, but I thought, no, I actually want to give them like journal prompts, how to work through grief, or self-care tasks, or a monthly intention to actually acknowledge their loss, whatever that looks like. So yeah, it's just at Healing Heart Support on Instagram, and we do also sometimes online workshops, like educational seminars, workshops. Yeah, and I'm also very, what's the word? Contactable. I don't know if that's a word. Independently as well. Like if you want to reach out, like I sometimes meet independently, individually with the women who attend the support group. And normally I just check in on them as well, just to see how they're going. Like it's completely free, it's voluntary, it's just so that there is support there. Because yeah, I could have benefited from something like that at the time.
Yeah. As and when you said it was women only, it's sometimes in that space you can almost feel like you've got permission. There's no judgment to actually share to the full extent your story. Because sometimes when we have other people around us, or if there's men in the room, you can almost feel like you kind of filter your story, because you're like, oh, I don't actually want to go in that deep because maybe that person doesn't want to hear it, and he's a male, or maybe he doesn't want to hear about the blood, or so I get it. Like I get that you like why to have it, female participants only. So yeah, definitely I'll pop your information in the show notes so people can find
Thanks.
you anyway, so you're just one click away. Is there anything else that you wanted to leave the people listening with? Anything that you wish you knew that maybe could support them where they
Oh,
are right
okay.
now?
Yeah, I actually hadn't really thought about it, and just until you mentioned it, and I was like, that's a good point. So I'll probably just finish with that. And I suppose I actually did like a workshop with on this topic. And it's not to everybody's experience is different. It's not to generalize or stereotype, be sexist or anything like that. But generally speaking, I feel like men and women can experience grief differently. We all still grieve, but like you just almost like you had said, if you're talking about pregnancy loss, from a woman's perspective, she's going to be like, there's all this blood and it's all like whatever it is she's talking about. Whereas he didn't experience that. So his experience is, and it's not that it's still completely valid, it's still a loss. But I have found that as well in the support group. Sometimes women are like, oh my God, like my husband doesn't feel anything, like he doesn't have a soul, like he doesn't miss the baby, like he doesn't have emotions and he just doesn't care. And then I'm always like, look, I know what that's like, I know that feeling, but also a lot of the time a guy, like a man, he's just wanting to protect, to provide, to make sure you're okay. So if he's not really, he might not be focused as such on the loss, it's just you and making sure you're okay. So he might seem insensitive and like he doesn't care, or like he's running from it, but he still feels it. It's just maybe in a different way. So I thought that's worth noting, because a lot of women are like, I don't understand, help me, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They still do feel it. It looks different because
Mm.
men are also conditioned in certain ways to show
Yeah.
up. They got to be that pillar of strength. They can't show emotion. So unless you have a really super emotional man who's in touch with his feelings, which is very rare, that's definitely not been my experience either. Um, you you can absolutely feel you're like, we are not on the same planet right now. We're not on the same page. Um, but yeah, showing each other some compassion towards each other, just to know that they are going through it. You are going to be on different stages, like different pages, but it is there. They're just going to navigate it in a different way. They may not show their emotions so openly and freely. And they may want to go to the man's shed, but that man's shed could be his way of, taking him out of the situation and going, okay, I just need to be here right now to process like what's happening. I need to.
Mm.
So he's finding what works. Letters work really well
Mm.
between couples because it takes out any emotion, any judgment, any tension or resentment you have towards them,
Mm.
and you can write each other a letter and just tell each other what it is that you're feeling, where you might feel like you need support from the other person, and hopefully work towards bringing you back because it can be it can drive a wedge between people for sure, to feel like they're not getting the right support from their partner. Whereas, like you said, it's there, it's what they're feeling. There's definitely grief and all of the things there. It just looks different.
Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, I think it's especially when you're in that and you're experiencing that grief or whatever it is in your relationship, but and sometimes you sort of you tell yourself these things that they don't care, they don't love me, or they're selfish, or they have no emotions, they have no soul, they don't, whatever it is. But I a lot of the time, I think I've studied it a lot, I've experienced it a lot, I've read about it a lot, and I think what I can say is that just men and women have similar experiences, but they just speak different languages, and it's just learning that they sometimes are like, oh my gosh, women are just so dramatic, and they're so complicated, and they're so confusing, and they're so overwhelming, and they're just so sensitive, they just feel everything, and then we're there like, do you not feel anything, so it's just it's just find that middle ground. I would definitely recommend, I know it's not really specifically related to grief, but I feel like it does help a lot with that process, is to read the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. It's I mean, it's not grief related, but also it might help you understand that, just yeah, it could be your dad, it could be your brother, your partner, whatever. It helps, like, okay, that's how they're processing it, I can understand that.
Yeah, that's the book I thought of when you were saying that they don't speak the
Oh.
same language. I was
Yeah.
like, yes, there is definitely, we are different from different planets. Like we
Yeah,
are.
I think so, yeah.
No, thank you so much for everything that you have shared, Sian, and I truly appreciate you being a part of the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Sharna. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. I'm very honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing _PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.